Like a 95-mile-per-hour fastball right in the spine, we are ready to go on this week's edition of the Pittsburgh Sporting News videocast. I'm Michael Waterloo, and I'm joined by Mr. Garberkery and a mixture of Red Sox Altoona curve there, John Penline. Gentlemen, how we doing today?
I'm doing great.
Doing great. All right, you guys ready to talk some sports?
Let's do it.
We have a full slate of Pirates talk, a little bit of the Steelers, but first, as always, let's get into our player of the week. And it is that little bastard that just will not go away. That is Josh Harrison, player of the week again. This week, since Monday, has 9 runs, 4 home runs, including one last Sunday if you want to give him 5. 5 RBIs, and he has a slash of 400, 464, and 1,080. Sign him up for the Hall of Fame right now, gentlemen, because he's the player of the week yet again. He has now 7 good weeks of his major league season. So congrats, Josh Harrison. Enjoy it while you can, and I'll see you back down to earth once you fall.
You're so salty that he's playing well this year. It infuriates you that he's playing.
I'm happy he is. It's just people, like I see Gar tweet last night, yeah, this Harrison guy isn't good. He's not. He's enjoying a great streak. So,
well, the other third baseman throws the ball on the moon every time he gets it, so maybe he is that good.
We're going to get into that. We are going to get into that, trust me. And I have plenty of names just to throw out. If you buy into Josh Harrison and you don't buy into these guys, you're high because you have to. But let's get in first to Andrew McCutchen last night, guys. Took a fastball right off his spine, 95 miles per hour, fell on the ground, spiked his bat, mouthed to Clint Hurdle. If he does it again, I'm going to beat the you-know-what out of him. And it was in reaction to Paul Goldschmidt breaking his hand, getting hit by a pitch up and in by Ernesto Frieri, who we all know has no control in the world, on Friday night. Guys, I want to get your reaction. Gar, I'll start with you. I know I have no problem with McCutchen getting hits. I expected it. I just didn't like it in the situation and how it happened. But I think people are complaining a little bit too much about it.
Well, you know, it was fun kind of following Twitter with you guys because I found myself reacting a little bit more like a fan, and you guys were reacting a little bit more like media members or guys that have played the game. You know, I guess more than anything, you know, Bob Walk said it in his post game. I mean, we all were commenting. He was on fire last night, but the one point that he made that I thought really made a lot of sense is, you know, I thought it was kind of a cowardly thing for the Diamondbacks to do it in the 9th inning, the game out of hand. If you're going to send a message, if you're ticked off, right or wrong about your star player getting hit, do something about it early in the game. Have the courage and the conviction to make that statement and say something. I mean, you're one of the worst teams in the National League, who I picked to go to the playoffs, by the way. But, you know, you're one of the worst teams in the National League. It's not like this game is like life and death for you. Make a statement. Go ahead. If you're ticked off, do something about it. I mean, you know, we got into a little bit of a deliberation about, you know, obviously it's pretty hard to say that Ernesto Frieri had intent because the guy can't find the freaking strike zone to save his life. And so, you know, I think we'd all probably agree he did not try to hit Goldschmidt in that particular play. But you know, I do feel bad for McCutchen. I think John made the point on Twitter last night. You know, McCutchen's probably angry because he's always the focal point. You know, every time somebody wants to throw a pitch at somebody, and you know, we saw it ad nauseum against the Reds, but he seems to be getting it from a lot of different places, and you probably get a little bit more angry just because from a personal level, McCutchen's such a great guy. He's not a showboater. He's not a jerk on and off the field, and you kind of get a little ticked when you see somebody throw a 95-mile-per-hour fastball into a guy's back, let alone the fact that obviously if he gets hurt, we're in deep doo-doo.
And John, I know you're a pitcher. Kind of take me through your mindset. What you would do? Do you think that's dirty from your vantage point there?
Well, I didn't like the fact that they set him up for it, and I think he mentioned that in the post game. You know, it's one thing. I mean, if you're going to hit him, then hit him. But I don't like the fact that they throw like outside slider and then they throw inside fastball because, you know, as a hitter, you're kind of like looking for a pitch to hit. And if the guy comes inside and hits you, then okay, it's warranted. I mean, he knew, relatively speaking, like he knew that that something was going to happen to him. Like, he knew he was going to get hit at some point. But the fact that, they throw inside and then they try to throw outside slider, that means, okay, well, he's trying to get me out. And when you come back and you throw 95 miles an hour right into the guy's back, I mean, that's, get it over with. Get it over with. And as far as, everybody's saying that it's cowardly that they did this at the end of the game. I was actually expecting it at the end of the game, regardless of the score, for the simple fact that Chase Anderson doesn't throw that hard. He throws 90-91. They're waiting for somebody who could actually throw a decent fastball to hit him, and they did. They put it in Randall Delgado. Now, people can say that's cowardly because the game was out of hand, but like you mentioned, Guard, they're in dead last. They're not going anywhere anyway. What does winning this game mean to them? So I don't really buy into that as much, and I'm probably like one of the only people. So it's not, not to combat what you're saying, Gar, but at the same time, I don't think it was that. Him getting hit in the ninth really didn't make a difference to me. We all knew he was going to get hit at some point in that game, and Goldschmidt's already on the DL because he got hit. You can't really hit anybody back because they don't have any other good players. So I think you just have to move on from this, and the last thing you want to do is get one of your players hurt or spark a brawl or get somebody suspended right before you go into playing a pretty important home stretch.
You talk about there's no one left to hit. Do you think the Pirates are going to feel differently about that today, maybe with a Mark Trumbo in the lineup? Aaron Hill, I hate to say that, but those are kind of the two big dogs that the Diamondbacks have right now. Do you think it's over? Because Clint Hurdle, I believe his post-game quote was, "The game takes care of itself." So to me, that kind of seems like, we're going to hit you right back.
Interesting quote. I caught that too, Mike. There's no question. Before they DFA Ernesto Fieri after this weekend, John, I do wonder if they're going to throw him into that third day and just for poops and giggles and maybe take a shot. And when Aaron Hill was in that game last night, that's exactly what I thought. I thought, you know what, they're going to just throw one at Hill. He's kind of an ancillary player, but he's kind of one of their better guys, and no one will really care. One more thing, I keep waiting for somebody to have the courage and conviction to throw one at Russell Martin. Russell Martin clearly has got a little bit of a personality to him when it comes to interacting with players and coaches, for that matter. I think it would have been a little fun, and if they had any cojones, maybe Alan Trammell would have said, you know what, let's throw one at Russell Martin and see how he reacts. That would have been a little bit more entertaining than throwing at a guy like Andrew McCutchen, though. I got to tell you, man, I've never seen Andrew McCutchen angry. Even when he got hit by the Reds at those few times, it didn't really ever seem like you really saw him like viscerally get totally angry. That was really something to see. Now we know what he can be like, and it might light a fire under him. He looked like he was ready to go last night after he got hit.
I saw him like last year when he got first hit by Chapman. He snapped in the dugout a little bit, but yeah, I never saw him as mad as he was last night. He did say, "I'm ready to go now. Maybe eventually I'll get my respect." That kind of was like, all right, Andrew, really got to say that. But a little bit of news here. We first reported it last night, Pittsburgh Sporting News, that the Pirates are going to sign Jason Nix. The signing is official. So if you're excited about Mr. Nix, who I believe is hitting 154 or something in 15 games with the Phillies this year, they have signed him. Yeah, he has a line of 154, 214, and 231, 2 RBIs on the season, 18 games for the Phillies. He was picked up by the Tampa Bay Rays, released on Friday. They have sent down Brett Morrell and DFA Dean Anna for assignment. So the Brett Morrell, for now, era is over, and Nix is on the big league roster. So maybe a phantom DL stint will be coming from Mr. Alvarez. But, John, I think it was you last night. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I was totally off base with the Ike Taylor thing last week. I told you I'd address that. But was it you that said it comes with the territory of being a star player, that once one of their star players get hit, that you have to expect that too?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Andrew McCutchen stirs the drink in Pittsburgh when it comes to their lineup, and of course they're going to hit him. Who are they going to hit? Not to say that they don't have any other good players, because they definitely do. Polanco and Josh Harrison and I agree, Gar. It would have been interesting to see if they hit Russell Martin, but personally, I would never hit Russell Martin out of anybody in that lineup because he is psychotic. And, so he's like the last guy I'd probably hit. But, yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of good players, but nobody like McCutchen. And even if McCutchen were to leave and go to the Yankees, or if he were to go to the Red Sox and hit in the middle of that lineup right now, he'd still be the best player on the field. So, it comes with the territory of being an MVP. You see it all the time around the league. I mean, it wasn't on purpose that Frieri hit Goldschmidt, but Frieri hit Goldschmidt, and it's eye for an eye in this league, whether you agree with it or not. So it absolutely had to do with the fact that he's such a good player.
I think it's the position there where you have to look at it, okay, if one of their horrible relievers, I don't know, let's just say Addison Reed, came up and in on McCutchen by accident, broke his hand, can you imagine Yinzer Nation? Can you imagine, oh my gosh, we have to get retribution right now for Andrew McCutchen. We cannot stand by and let this happen. They do not protect him, even though the Pirates hit the Reds just as many times as the Reds hit the Pirates last year. But, because it's the Pirates, they have to do something. So whether it was the first inning, the 8th inning, the 9th inning, or an extra innings, people would call for the Pirates to go ahead and hit Paul Goldschmidt square in the back. Without a doubt, it would happen, but people don't want to look at it that way. I agree they shouldn't have set him up with the slider down and away on the second pitch, whatever, get it over with. But, I mean, like John said, Chase Anderson throws about a Jamie Moyer fastball, so you have to put in somebody who's going to actually hit him hard. So you have to look at it that way. Are you kind of with us in that semblance there, Gar?
Oh yeah, you guys are right. I mean, I think you did a retweet with somebody, and I made the pretty obvious statement about Fieri's intentions and lack thereof because the guy can't hit the strike zone. But yeah, you're absolutely correct, Mike. I mean, it comes with the territory, and you know the old saying, Yinzers are gonna Yinz. I mean, any fan's is gonna react that way, and we saw it last year with the Reds. I mean, people were up in arms. When Aroldis Chapman is throwing 100 miles an hour at a guy's head. And I don't want to get too off track, but I did find it interesting what Ken Maka said last night. And I don't know if you guys agree at all, just about the whole idea of safety and whether or not, we're getting to a point now that when you're throwing these 95 to 100 mile per hour fastballs at people, you're going to get somebody seriously hurt. He mentioned Kirby Puckett, for instance. That's one that, really stands out where, you could end a guy's career. So I don't know, there's so many intricacies to the, the inside parts of baseball that, maybe I'm a little off base, but there does seem to be a safety issue here. I know about sending a message, but we're seeing baseball change. I mean, it was like seeing a unicorn yesterday, seeing a manager actually get kicked out of a game. And that dynamic has been taken out of the game completely. Maybe this is another dynamic that needs to be addressed before somebody gets seriously hurt.
All right, and another way somebody can get seriously hurt on the field is if somebody's just in the way of a Pedro Alvarez throw, because right now nobody knows where the hell they're going. That means fans, players, coaches, who knows? He was pulled last night for Brett Morel because of another errant throw and striking out in a big situation. So, guys, what is going to happen with Pedro Alvarez? That's the question that seems to be blowing up besides Andrew McCutchen, who they're going to hit and to get redemption for him, if you will. What's going to happen with Pedro? Are they going to DFA him? They found out they're out of options. Can you possibly get rid of a guy who has 30 home run potential, has 15 this year, or you kind of ride it out and talk about it in the offseason, John?
Wow. Pick one. How long have we been doing this, Mike? Got to pick one.
I said John. Did I not?
I didn't hear that part. I just fell asleep.
John, that's how long we've been doing it.
My first name is John too, so you might be confused.
No, I don't know. I don't know what you do with Pedro Alvarez. People get so attached to him, like, and then we make excuse, oh, well, it's a mental issue. Yeah, it's a mental issue, but he's got to figure it out. He has to figure it out, or you have to move him in the offseason to an American League team so he can DH. But he's not even hitting. I mean, it'd be one thing if he was hitting well, and you can say, oh, well, his on-base percentage is up 17 points from last year, and his average is a little bit higher. He's not striking out as much. That's great. But that's not his job. His job is to hit home runs. He's got 15 home runs this year. He hasn't hit one since July 11th. I mean, you combine that with the fact that he can't throw a ball from third to first, even though he's been doing that his whole life. I mean, that's a serious problem. And I mean, it's, you know, they take him out and they put him on the bench because they're trying to win games, and then they put him out there because they know that they have to try to get him going. But it's just, and I'm not saying you have to give up on him right this second, but we're seriously coming to a point where you have to consider something to get him off the field every game, because he's not helping right now at all. I mean, you can maybe use him as a pinch hitter, but even, like I said, he's not really hitting the ball. That hit he had the other night was his first hit this year as a pinch hitter. So I don't really know what you do with him this year. You basically just have to deal with it and hope he can turn it around. But most likely they're gonna have to move him in the off season. I mean, people talk about moving him to first, and I agree to an extent. But like last night, Ike Davis had a ground ball hit to him with a guy on third. He ended up tagging the runner out. But if that guy breaks for home and that's Alvarez, that ball's going into the screen. He's not going to throw that guy out at home, and that's a run. So it's just it's time. It's just time to move on from Pedro, whether it's a couple months from now in the off season or the trade deadline next year. I don't even think they can wait that long.
Well, when you say move him, you mean move him to a different team, not move him to first, right? In general?
Move him to a different team.
Well, his trade value right now is about as valuable as me and you combined.
I don't care. He has no business being on the field right now.
All I'm asking is, what do you realistically think the Pirates could get for him?
Oh, probably David Price.
Okay, what do you realistically think the Pirates could get for him?
I don't know. That's for Neil Huntington to talk about with other GMs. Obviously you're not going to look for another major leaguer, because if you do, you're going to end up with Lance Nix. But I mean, I figure if you can get like a prospect for him, maybe a pitching prospect, maybe a guy who can play third. I mean, I don't know. It's tough to say. It depends on what teams would be interested in what they would be offering. I mean, that's something that we're talking a couple months down the road during winter meetings. So I can't even specify on what exactly they would do. And honestly, I'm not even qualified. I'm not even going to act like I am to try to see what they can get for Pedro Alvarez. That's for Neil Huntington to decide.
Now, Gar, I know you kind of have high hopes for Pedro. Are you kind of afraid if they? Well, you did have high hopes. I don't know if they're kind of dwindling away like the rest of people who watch the Pirates. But are you kind of nervous if the Pirates do trade Pedro? He figures it out. You have it's hard to compare the two, but a Jose Bautista type thing or a Brandon Moss type resurgence, something like that.
Well, I guess the hope in both of the cases that you bring up is that you don't end up with nothing when you let those other guys go. A couple of months ago, Mike, I wrote an article on PSN basically, talking about, the notion of trading Pedro Alvarez and basically, rubber stamping that probably was a good idea. And who would have known how nebulous the situation would get since then? I mean, this was really before he was having just an unreal, like Steve Blass-like type of throwing issue. I mean, it's like Chuck Knobloch or something. The guy just is completely off the reservation. And I don't know what's giving, Clint Hurdle more pain, his hip right now, or trying to figure out what the heck he's going to do with Pedro Alvarez from game to game. It's painful to watch. And, you bring up a great point, Mike. I mean, you're talking about a guy who is potentially a 40-plus home run guy. In my Comedy of Errors, when we had our Major League Prediction show, I mean, I talked about this guy being, a 41-20 guy this coming season and being an MVP type of candidate. And he's so lost. And, it seems cliche to talk about, well, you bring your defense to the plate, but it's just affecting everything that he's doing on the field. And, I've never been a huge Pedro Alvarez fan beyond, the fact that he hit 30-plus home runs. I mean, he just kind of gives you the idea that he's just playing the streak through until he can get out of Pittsburgh, in my opinion. But I really feel for the guy. I mean, he looks so lost. And, yeah, there is a risk, Mike. I mean, if you give him away to some other team, sure. Maybe he ends up being, this great player. But, I see a lot of, done in this guy. I mean, I see a guy who could end up being a DH, that's going to hit 25, 30 home runs for you, but is also going to hit like 210 and drive you absolutely crazy. And it sucks because maybe they should have looked into dealing him sooner. I'm not saying going the Aramis Ramirez deal here, but maybe they should have looked a little further. But I can understand, he's coming off a great year, and the Pirates are considered, a contender going into the season. Maybe they still are, but now they're really in a pickle because they're going to go into the offseason, and I do agree with John. I'm looking to deal the guy, but, at this point, I will take a stab at it. Maybe you're looking to maybe get a middle-of-the-rotation type of guy that, you have a little bit control over for 3 or 4 years, somebody who can maybe make an impact and help you out a little bit, or, somebody who maybe you can work in, through the minors at third base, but something. You may feel it in 2 or 3 years, but right now I'm not 100% sure that you are.
So what is the answer for this year in the long term? Is it that from now on you just play Pedro based on matchups only, start Josh Harrison at third once the whole outfield is healthy, Marte, Polanco, McCutchen, have Walker at second? I think we are all in agreement that's what we would all do, right? Just a simple head nod. Okay. Yeah.
Because they're still winning, despite the fact that he's spiking the ball on the ground or throwing it off the popcorn guy. They're still winning games. And, I mean, you have to go with the hot hand because it's about winning. And people are going to sit there and they're going to bitch and complain about how they didn't make all these trades. But at the end of the day, they still have a roster that's winning games, and they can't have Pedro Alvarez at third base. Like, there's no reason for a fan base to collectively hold their breath every time the ball's hit the third. And I've actually found myself doing it while watching other games online. Like, every time a ball's hit the Juan Uribe, I'm like, oh my God, he's going to throw this off the right field foul pole. And I'm like, oh wait, no, he's not Pedro Alvarez. He's able to make a play. It's just they have to try. I mean, they can't do anything about it now. He's a bench bat. He's a guy you hope can come up and hit a big homer late in a game to win a game for you. But you cannot start him at third.
So starting the 2015 season, who's your opening day third baseman for the Pittsburgh Pirates? Is it Pedro Alvarez still? To me, I think it is. Gar?
I guess it just depends. Even when Pedro Alvarez was playing well, I have been of the belief that you're shopping Pedro Alvarez in the winter meetings. That he's a guy that's moving on, and that you're probably going to get your best value for him when he still has some playing time left, and whoever acquires him has a chance to maybe convince him to sign a long-term contract. Now you're in a real pickle. I mean, it's hard. We can, and I think we're going to here in a few minutes deliberate a little bit about the merits of Josh Harrison. You've got a couple more months to see what Josh Harrison does. He's been all over the place. He's only played a handful of games at third. I mean, it's not like we can just sit here and blindly assume that Josh Harrison's going to just step in and be a great third baseman. I mean, there has been a lot more talk of late, and I'll leave it at this, that maybe you consider moving Neil Walker over there. I mean, at one point, Neil Walker was really kind of considered a third baseman in the bigger picture before he got called up after, what was his, the Japanese... Yeah. I mean, before he blew up, he was kind of considered a third baseman. Maybe you go back to that proposition and maybe put Josh Harrison at second until Alan Hansen, who just got moved to second, I read, can make that transition somewhere down the line.
But do you guys, we're going to get into the Josh Harrison stuff now. We do it every single week. It's my favorite discussion to have, of course. But how much faith do you guys have in Josh Harrison? Because I will reiterate once again, he's had a 7-week stretch. On May 2nd, he was at 208, 240, 375. And since June 17th, he's been 258, 290, 371, besides this past week where he's hitting Ted Williams type numbers. So, Gar, I know you're one of the biggest fans of Josh Harrison in the world. You love him. I think I'm actually rooting for the guy. No matter what people think I want to see him fail. I do not. I just know the type of player Josh Harrison is. I get texts. I get tweets, I get Facebook things at me all the time. Oh, look at that, Josh Harrison. He sucks, right? Yeah, look at that. And again, I just say the same thing all the time. Talk to me in October. And if I'm wrong, I am wrong. But I 100% expect him to fall back down to earth. He cannot keep this pace up. He's a streaky guy who hustles. He gives you that little extra stuff off the bench. He gives you that versatility, and he can spot start for you. And I'm in agreement. You play the hot hand while you can. And right now, he's the hot hand. You have to keep him in the lineup and see if he can keep it up. But if you're a firm believer in Josh Harrison, you also have to be a believer in Casey McGee for what he's doing with Miami Marlins, a guy who was out of baseball last year playing in Japan, hitting 303, 373, 375 with 59 RBIs. You have to be a believer in Brock Holt, who started every position for the Red Sox except catcher and pitcher, hitting 305, 354, and 429. You also have to believe in Charlie Blackmon, who came out of nowhere for the Colorado Rockies, hitting 296, 341, 452, 14 RBIs, and 56 RBIs. If you can believe in every single one of them and think that they're the real deal, go ahead and believe in Josh Harrison. If not, then just stop right now because you're just a Yinzer who likes the Pirates. So,
Mike, I love your acumen, and it's hard to debate you because you know in all truthfulness, you know a hell of a lot about the game. You know, and a couple of those examples are great examples. McGee's a little bit, you know, he's an older veteran. He's been at it a while. He's having a great year. But
John?
You all right?
It looks like Gar froze there. So you and I will take it over.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, playing well this year. What are you going to say? I mean, you can get as mad as you want, Mike, but he's playing well. I mean,
I'm happy he is. I truly am. He's a great guy. He's just not a good baseball player. He's a good, not great baseball player like he's playing, which everybody wants to see.
Sport, but there's so few players that play the same way each year.
But how many times have we seen this in the past, John? Even before Pedro started sucking, everyone's like, you got to trade Pedro right now so you can start Josh Harrison. We saw that the past few years. You got to play Michael McHenry. Michael McHenry is the answer at catcher because he can provide some big homers over the Chicago Cubs and Washington Nationals. You have to let him play. I mean, we see it every single year that these guys break out only to fall and crash to earth.
But we see MVP candidates that end up falling and crashing to earth, too. It's just the nature of the game. I mean, whatever happened to Morgan Ensberg, who had 45 homers for the Astros, then he fell off the planet? I mean, it happens all the time. I'm not saying, is Gar just taking unlimited selfies right now, or what?
He just keeps freezing and popping in and out, but yeah.
But, I agree. I mean, you can't expect Josh Harrison to be the everyday third baseman in the foreseeable future. I mean, he's not going to play as well as he's playing this year, next year, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, at least he's able to throw the ball to first base. I mean, that's my thing. And I agree, Mike, actually. I mean, when they break for, when they're in spring training next year in March, Pedro Alvarez is going to be the third baseman. He's going to be the third baseman. They're not going to move him to first base because they've got Ike Davis there, and Gabby Sanchez, and they can't have three third basemen that can't hit. I mean, what would they be? So, yeah, I think that I think he's going to be the third baseman there, and Scott Boras is going to be out there every day in November and December hitting him grounders, yelling at him, "Come on, throw the ball! You're costing me money." But at the end of the day, you just, what a mess. What a freaking mess with Pedro Alvarez. And thank God Josh Harrison is playing well because they'd have nobody at third base. And really, you can add Jordy Mercer to that list too because Jordy Mercer has always been a solid hitter. All through the minors and in college, he was a solid hitter. But he's never been this good. And for him to play like this, and I mean, you think about like most contending teams, like Hanley Ramirez and Juan Uribe. That's the left side of the infield for the Dodgers. Okay, the Pirates have Jordy Mercer and Josh Harrison, and they're just as productive, if not more, this year. That's baseball.
It's ridiculous. Go ahead, Gar. I know you got cut off there.
Yeah, before I get thrown off into the ether again, I guess I just have a little bit of a different perspective that you well know. You know, Josh Harrison is 26 years old. He was a high pick for the Cubs back in the day. And, you know, if he would have been 6 foot, he's probably a first or second round pick based on his production at the University of Cincinnati. I mean, he was a really, really good college player. And I know that doesn't translate. A lot of really good college players don't make it in the major leagues, but you know, maybe this guy is just finding it. He's finally getting an opportunity. You know, it's kind of like the old analogy with a pinch hitter. Some guys just aren't great pinch hitters because they need consistent at bats. And you know, Harrison's finally getting a real opportunity. He's finally starting to maybe find a groove that sometimes players, it takes some time. I mean, Neil Walker, you know, there was a lot of deliberation. Oh, this guy just doesn't have it. He's never going to make it in the majors. And now we're seeing, you know, at 26, 27 years old, a guy that's starting to look like a really good player that supposedly might be pricing himself out of baseball. I mean, sometimes, you know, guys just need a chance. I think a lot of people out there maybe undervalue what Josh Harrison really was going into baseball. I mean, he's actually a really good player. He's not somebody who just came out of nowhere. The Cubs thought enough, I believe, to spend a 4th or 5th round pick on him. That means that somebody thought this guy had some real talent. And I don't know. You guys are probably more right than I am. The guy's probably going to falter. But I'm enjoying seeing this guy come along, and it would be a real boon for the Pirates if he can continue going. And like John and Mike, both of you said, I mean, where would we be without him? I mean, where would we be right now without him playing the way he is? And who knows? I hope it continues just from a fan standpoint. I don't need to do the "I told you so" bit. That's pretty gay. But you know, let's just hope that this continues and we can see Josh Harrison continue what he's doing. And if not, I'll pat you on the bat mic and tell you that Shetler and you were right.
I'll be the first one to admit I'm wrong, and I'm hoping I am again. I know John doesn't believe me. I like Josh Harrison. I want to see him keep this up. I think he's a great guy. I pulling for him, always had great interactions. Yeah. He works hard. No one, aside from maybe Andrew McCutchen, works harder on that team than Josh Harrison does. I'm not convinced yet, and I won't be until I see it for a much longer period of time. Not these numbers, but consistent over time. Now, guys, let's talk about some trade deadlines. I know us three were very vocal. I know we kind of differ, so we might actually have some more yelling, friendly debates, you know, all that kind of stuff going on. The Pirates were in on John Lester and David Price. Those were the big names. We heard at a period of time they were the front runners for both. And, of course, sources everywhere, you know, had a bunch of different teams linked to them. And it turns out John Lester goes to the Oakland Athletics for Yoenis Cespedes, along with Johnny Gomes going to Oakland. And then David Price goes to Detroit in a 3-team deal for Drew Smiley, Nick Franklin with Austin Jackson going to Seattle. So, John, I know you and I, we've gone back and forth all week about this, what we would have done for John Lester and David Price. I was willing to, what do you want? Go ahead and take it. That's what you can have. You would do that for Price, not for Lester. So are you satisfied that the Pirates didn't get either of them, or do you think, you know, has your mind changed a little bit since the deadline has passed?
I'm disappointed that they didn't get him, but I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, people are on here, and I read the comments on Pittsburgh Sporting News, and sometimes I comment on the comments because I'm going insane, and then whoever monitors the site probably deletes them so I don't start a fight. But, you know, people here are just unbelievable. You know, Steelers are 2-7. They'll win out, find a wild card spot, and make it to the Super Bowl. Pirates are 1 game out of a playoff spot, and they attempt to bring the entire house to David Price, and David Price, 1, says, I don't want to go to the Pirates. I want to go to a team that's a true contender, whatever the hell that means. And two, I want, you know, the Rays go, we don't want prospects, we want major leaguers, which I can't figure out for the Rays, okay? So what do you want the Pirates to do? You want them to trade a guy like Marte? So you want them to fill a hole by creating another hole? I mean, no, you can't do that. You can't create another hole by trading away a major league player. Yeah, if you're the A's and you've got a decent lineup and you've got a loaded pitching, I don't even like that trade, to be honest. I hate that trade. I think Cespedes is better off in Boston. But anyway, I can't fault the GM for not getting either one of those players because it was Peter Gammons from Major League Baseball from ESPN, who's been covering baseball since the 1900s. He is the one that broke the story that the Rays turned down a better offer that included 4 top prospects for David Price. Peter Gammons did, not Joe Starkey, not Dan Zangrilli, because it would have taken him 12 years to say it, not any local TV or radio guys, okay? It was brought out by a national baseball writer, and still people are claiming conspiracy. Like Bob Nutting is paying off, so Bob Nutting's too cheap to put a winning team on the field, even though they are a winning team for the 2nd straight year. But he's not too cheap to pay off national media members who have obviously no problem destroying their careers over making up a trade rumor. These are the idiots we have to deal with in the city, really? I can't deal with this crap anymore, Mike. Can't take it. I'm going insane. For the record, I like the offers. I'm disappointed they didn't get them. I don't blame the Pirates for not getting them because they gave them their best offer.
And it takes 2 to tango. You can't force the other people to hit accept, if you will, on a deal. You can't force them to do it. John, I know you and I disagree about the whole thing mostly, but one thing we did agree about was that we were shocked that a team like the Rays, who operates the way that they have since they've been existent, didn't want the prospects instead of the major league talent. We were trying to come up with a comparison, Gar, of who would match Nick Franklin and Drew Smiley. We came up with it's not even that good of a comparison. It's all I could think of was Marte and Nick Kingham, because to me, Smiley's better than Kingham right now. And, I mean, Marte is much better than Nick Franklin is, but Franklin was a top prospect, which everybody loves, by the way. And, you have to keep the prospects for the rest of your life. You can't move any because that's the way you win. But that's the only comparison we could come up with. You were all in on Lester and Price. More so Price than Lester, because I think you're with John. You don't want to give up Glasnow and Bell just for a 2-month rental, right?
Yeah, I guess this is my theory on it. I stole this from the great Colin Cowherd, Say It Out Loud. And, what I kept thinking is you're going through all these scenarios and potential trades and who might be going. I just kept saying out loud to myself, are the Pirates going to be good enough with either of those players we're discussing to actually get to and win a World Series? And every time I ask that question, and I know, it's a lot of it has to do with luck and the right matchups. I just don't think this team is good enough to do that. Are they good enough to eke into the playoffs? Yes. Could they maybe even win the division? Absolutely. But I just don't see this team this year being a championship caliber type of team. I mean, we spent 10 minutes talking about arguably the best player the Pirates have, not named Andrew McCutchen, basically being replaced by Brent Morrill, who was just sent down for a guy hitting 151, a 31-year-old utility player that's batting 151 in limited games this year. What does that tell you about where the Pirates really are? I mean, sure, Josh Harrison's a great story. Gregory Polanco is going to be a great player. Starling Marte's had a terrible year. When he's not been hurt or grieving, he hasn't done anything. What you need him to play better. You want to go up against a guy like, I don't know, Ryu in L.A. with Charlie Morton? I don't. I mean, that doesn't seem like a very good matchup. And we haven't even talked about some of the super teams in the AL. I mean, sure, it'd be cool to get to the World Series, if you run into a little luck. But I think it's, at this point, like John said, we're 2 years into being competitive now and making the playoffs potentially. I think you're looking at the World Series or bust now. And if you're not good enough to do it, boy, I really don't like the idea of giving up guys like Josh Bell or Nick Kingham or Tyler Glasnow, because as you guys well know, your second or third best prospects in Pittsburgh can look a hell of a lot different than they do in Baltimore or in L.A. or in Tampa Bay. I mean, we have legitimate prospects. And yes, you're rolling the dice with prospects. I understand that. But our prospects are pretty darn good. And if they give you the ability, over the next 5 or 6 years to really be a competitive team, I don't do it. I don't do it. And I'm with John. I think that Neil Huntington probably did, try to parlay some of his bets. But in the end, I'm actually pretty happy we didn't end up with those players.
Even for David Price, when in the offseason you can dangle him out there again and you can get some of that return back, different prospects. Because, guys, if you remember, guys like Brandon Wood, he was you couldn't miss him as a prospect. You cannot go wrong with it. Take the proven guy. He's under, yes, you have to pay him about $20 million next year after arbitration and whatnot. You can trade him back in the offseason, get some of those pieces back. The NL Central is horrible. It's a horrible division. People are going to say it's so close. It's so close because it's bad. The Brewers aren't a great team. The Cardinals can't get hot. The Reds are hurt. The Pirates are not that good of a team either. And, yes, John.
The National League is garbage.
As a whole, absolutely.
The entire National League is garbage. The team that is tied with the Pirates in the wild card right now, they're 3-7 in their last 10. They just lost Matt Cain, presumably for the season, who's their best pitcher. They're going downhill big time. The Atlanta Braves have lost 5 in a row.
Then why not make the deal? Why not make the deal for David Price? Doesn't it give you more reason?
Because
so low.
Because as you just said, you need 2 teams to agree in order to have a deal.
I understand that. I completely understand that. What I'm saying is, why are people still okay with I don't think people should be mad the deal didn't happen, but people are like, I'm glad it didn't happen. Shouldn't you have wanted it to happen, though, for that reason? Because the NL is so weak that you could make that final push?
The only thing that I'll give, because I'm kind of in the middle. I was kind of like, David Price, and then when the Pirates were in on it, I'm like, ooh, David Price. So, but because I do see, obviously he's a stud, but the thing is you're going to get him for 9 to 10 starts. He's not going to go 10-0 with a 0.00 ERA. He's going to have hiccups. So you're basically hoping he can get you 7 wins, maybe go 7-2. You're telling me that they don't have a guy on the roster who can at least go 5-5, 6-3 right now in the rotation. And I agree. And I agree in the playoffs. You're going to start him probably twice in a 7-game series. But at the same time, I understand the idea that if you get him, he can help you win. I also understand the idea that you're giving up a lot for a guy who's going to help you, but he's really not going to help you as much as you think he is. The Tigers traded for him, and their odds of going to the World Series went up by 0.5%. And I know that all sounds like garbage, but mathematically speaking, how much of an impact does a starting pitcher really make when he's being traded for the last 2 months of the season and then maybe a month in the postseason? I'm good either way, and I understand that prospects don't work out all the time, but if you're talking 4 top prospects the Pirates were willing to offer, you're actually telling me that those 4 guys aren't going to work out. Nick Kingham could be a solid guy. What about Tyler Glasnow? What if he's able to continue being unhittable and he's able to get his control a little bit, on a normal level, get a little bit more fastball command and all that, and he comes up and he's a strikeout pitcher. That's something that that we probably would have traded away that we now have for cheap. And people hate the cheap word, but when you're in this market, you have to look at it that way.
If you're so confident in your drafting in your farm system, can't those prospects become expendable because you think you can just reload the system like Neil Huntington has? That's why the Pirates have one of the best systems in baseball, is because because the drafting has been so good in those positions. And Glasnow could be that guy, yeah, but once he reaches Double-A, maybe Triple-A, let's talk a little bit then, because right now he's doing it against people who still have pimples all over their face, just got out of high school.
Can I ask you guys a quick question? Because something just kind of popped into my mind, and I know you guys are, you know your baseball inside and out, and probably remember this deal. The deal that keeps popping into my mind as we're talking was the Doyle Alexander for John Smoltz deal in 1984, where Doyle Alexander went 9-0 and helped. That's me. My bad.
You making tea?
All right. While Gar fixes whatever the tea, he takes the teapot off the stove right now. He was talking about Doyle Alexander for John Smoltz, so I was waiting to see where he went with that. But, I mean, there's been examples in the past where people will trade prospects, they don't work out. I believe Cliff Lee was involved in 2 of those deals, if I remember correctly. It was him, Grady Sizemore, and Brandon Phillips for Bartolo Colon back in the day when the Montreal Expos traded him.
He's been traded 4 times for prospects, and Bartolo Colon is the only guy that's ever worked out.
There we go. I mean, prospects to me, I'll take a risk that they blow up, that they'll go ahead and go off if I can get a stud guy who can help the team, even if he's pitching once every 5 days. I'm more than willing to do that. All right, Gar, it looks like you got the tea off the stove there.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't see anything on fire, so hopefully we're all good. But I got my mute button ready to go in case it goes off again. But anyways, yeah, it just the Tigers ended up winning that World Series, but obviously the Atlanta Braves ended up with one of the greatest pitchers of all time. So how do you weigh those options? Does Tyler Glasnow, when they traded John Smoltz, he was in a similar position to where Tyler Glasnow is now. Actually, he was more of a single-A, double-A guy at that point. So it's just kind of an interesting thing that kind of popped into my mind. Would you take that World Series title, or would you take a guy that will be a generational pitcher for the next 15 years, and and be a guy who could carry your team?
I'd rather have the World Series and lose for 20 straight more years. That's me.
Gotcha.
I go for it, and I have faith they can reload the system. So if that means, because while the Braves may have got John Smoltz, who's a great pitcher, should be in the Hall of Fame, next year and the next 2 years, how many World Series did they win with him? I know they won, 14 or 15 straight division titles. They won 1 World Series, I believe it was 1995. 1996. Yeah. Same amount as the Tigers, and they're ones who trade that away. I'd be more than willing to trade away the prospects for a sure thing, take a shot at the World Series, and then just lose. Because you know what? Those prospects, like John said, Cliff Lee's been traded 3 or 4 times for prospects. The only one who's worked out is Bartolo Colon, and that is it.
Boy, was that '84 Tigers team good. Boy, were they good.
That was before I was born, so.
Yeah, they won close to, I think they won 115 games that year. They were a dominant team. So did they need Doyle Alexander? I don't know.
The Pirates aren't that team. I still don't think they're that good of a team. You look against the record against winning teams in the playoff, you'll laugh and you'll start to worry.
I just find it interesting that we just spent an entire summer yelling and screaming about how Ray Shero traded away all of his draft picks and prospects, didn't develop anybody internally, and then spent the cap on old fogies to try to put together a roster to win a Stanley Cup every year. And now we want the Pirates to spend as much money as they can possibly afford to spend right now, and we want them to trade all their prospects away for impact players to try to win a World Series right now.
Isn't it different? Hockey and baseball?
It is different because in hockey, when you trade for a big winger or you trade for a big-time defenseman or a goalie, they are out there most of the time. Whereas in baseball, other than playing out in the field, which is 1 position out of 9, they come up to bat 4 times maybe a game. They pitch once every 5 days.
Great point.
The impact on the idea with baseball, and Neil Huntington has said this, and people roll their eyes because people are idiots, but unlike in any other sport where you have, like in the NBA, you get LeBron James. He's the best player in the league. He's going to be out there for 45 out of the 48 minutes. Sidney Crosby's going to be out there for 25 to 30 minutes a game. But with baseball, you can't afford to lean on 1 or 2 good players. You have to have a complete team around you in order to be competitive. Yeah, Andrew McCutchen is far and beyond the best player on the team. He is one of the best players in the National League. Arguably the best. I know you'll argue Carlos Gomez is better, but he's not. So the idea, though, is these guys, they don't just play good and then they win the game single-handedly for these guys. There's a complete team around them. There's guys that play defense. There's guys that can hit a little bit. They've got decent pitching. They've got a decent bullpen. That's how you win. And pouring all of your resources into one player and expecting him to just, carry you all the way to the World Series is just not going to happen. He's going to make an impact. He's going to win you games, but the rest of the team has to play well. You have to have the rest of the team in order to play. You need a guy like Starling. If the Pirates are going to make it to the NLCS, they need a guy like Starling Marte to hit the ball. They need him to play good defense in left field. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, and they're a team that's built on prospects. They're a team that's built through the draft and through international signings, and they need those guys to play well in order to have a chance. And that's my way. Preferably, it's the best way that I can think of to go, because these long contracts that you're seeing, these big contracts, they're a thing of the past. I mean, Boston's dumping salary left and right. They're trying to get rid of these big contracts as well. And even if they do try to re-sign John Lester, they're not going to give him more than just a couple of years, because they realize that, yeah, you can reload and get more prospects, but the idea is you have quality control over these guys for the foreseeable future, and you can build a team that can compete rather than just rely on one or two players.
They did a similar thing a couple of years ago once they traded away Carl Crawford, Adrian Gonzalez. They got back mediocre, people would call BC free agents. They end up winning the World Series the next year, and then you saw what happened to them this year. I mean, the A's are a team. They went all in on the pitching. They went all in altogether because they have the offense. They lost Cespedes, who's slightly overrated to me. I mean, he can hit home runs and he can win home run derbies, but too bad that doesn't count the regular season. But that 1 through 4 that they have in the playoffs, no way. I do not want any part of that. I hope they win the division because they don't want to face Felix Hernandez in the open wild card game. But in any division, I will take the A's over any team because of that pitching staff right there. Even though their guys go out once every 5 days, I'll be more than happy to take that. Guys, Rob Beertemple on Twitter is reporting that now with the signing of Jason Nix, he becomes a new super utility with Josh Harrison, and this is all what he's assuming, presumably starting at third base every day. Pedro Alvarez to the bench, with Alvarez starting to work out at first base.
Interesting.
So, yeah, they'll be meeting with Neil Huntington today right before the game. Probably get more quotes from that. He'll be politically correct like he always is. Clint Hurdle will tell him some stuff but not tell him enough, because that's how managers are before the game. But, yeah, guys, we have about 5 minutes left before we get into our final word. I want to get into an interesting conversation. Gar, I talked to you about this before we went on air. I was speaking with Mike Asti on Twitter earlier this week, and we were talking about who the best outfield in baseball is. He said currently the best outfield in baseball is in Pittsburgh. And I said, pump your brakes. I don't really think that. Potential, absolutely. He still said, right now he thinks the Pirates have the best offense, the best outfield altogether in baseball because of the offense and the defense combined. Are you guys in agreement with him, or would you go with another unit? To start, I'll go with Miami Marlins. I feel like they have the best outfield in all of baseball right now. And whenever Beyond the Box Score website through SB Nation actually did an article, and through WAR, even though I'm not a huge WAR guy, they have the Marlins ranked as the best outfield in baseball due to offense, defense, and their young age. John, it looks like you're disagreeing.
Well, I don't think of the Pirates. I think currently, right now, I would take the Brewers outfield over the Pirates. But, I mean, you're looking at Ryan Braun and Carlos Gomez, and Chris Davis can hit with some power. But I think
Horror now, right?
Give me a break, Mark Madden.
He's one of the best defensive players in the game.
Yeah. He's also hitting 260. He struck out 3 times last night. I would say, though, based on potential down the road, I would say the Pirates outfield. I mean, we're banking on Starling Marte bouncing back, and we already know Andrew McCutchen, and we're banking on Gregory Polanco improving his game as he gets more of a veteran status. So right now I would say the Brewers, but down the road I would definitely say the Pirates.
It's funny, Mike. I didn't even think of Miami when you brought them up. My first response is exactly what John said about. Particularly, I guess I disagree a little bit with John in terms of the quality of a guy, bringing a guy like Parr in, not because he makes the point he's not a great hitter, but he's outstanding defensively. And when you augment that with obviously Gomez and Braun, you've got a couple of guys who can really rake. They were kind of the ones that currently were the first guys that came to mind for me. You know, it's all about potential with the Pirates. I mean, if Polanco can continue to progress and Marte show up and grow up, I mean, there's no question they'll be the best outfield in baseball. But today, I don't think they are. They're right there. But I would probably go with the Brewers.
I think the Brewers are definitely the conversation. I mean, I just love I love doing the comparison here. Giancarlo Stanton and Andrew McCutchen, overall player. To me, it's a toss-up. It depends. I mean, each one's more valuable in different aspects. I'd say Christian Yelich against, you can go Marte since they're more the proven guys. They're both younger, but I'll take Christian Yelich every day of the week. Ozuna against Polanco. I'll probably go Polanco just based on potential. Right now, I'll take Ozuna. Potential, I'll go Polanco. And they're 24, 23, and 22 years old, respectively. So young. And they're performing that well. Again, I want to see more of a sample size from them to see if they can keep this up over the long term. But I think they have long-term potential to be the best, and right now I take them too. But I definitely think the Brewers in that conversation. If Josh Hamilton was any sort of the player the Angels thought they were going to get, with him, Mike Trout, and Cole Calhoun, with Colin Cowgill coming off the bench, I mean, that's another unit you have to look at there. Before the A's got rid of Cespedes, that'd be another one you'd want to take a look at. But even now, the Red Sox have, Cespedes, Jackie Bradley's Jr., who's a very good defensive player, cannot play offense to save his life. Shane Victorino, whenever he has both his hamstrings intact, and now Alan Craig, too. But, okay, guys, we are on for our last word to wrap up the show. Guard, do you have something ready you want to start off with? Because, to be honest, I have nothing.
Well, there's two things that I want to bring up, so I'll just make the first thing really, really quick. You must re-sign Russell Martin. That's the first thing. But I do want to talk about Billy Beane and the Oakland A's. I really think that what Billy Beane has done this year with the Oakland A's is something that you really have to be impressed with. You know, they've been the bridesmaid for the better part of 15 years, year in, year out, so competitive. I think I heard one person call them, using Frankenstein type of lineups with just a bunch of, mutts and guys you've never heard of. This time around, it's a different story. This team, leads in run differential by an unreal margin. I want to say it's close to 80 runs, which is just unbelievable. And you look at that pitching staff, it's really awesome to see the Oakland A's and Billy Beane go for it. I don't know. I guess, Moneyball is one of the greatest books in the history of the world, in my opinion, regardless of whether you're a sports fan or not. And I can't believe that the movie actually took the Pepsi challenge with the book. I thought the movie was awesome, too. It's hard not to root for the A's and for Billy Beane. He does it, with so little in terms of resources. He found a whole new way to approach the game, and I thought him going out and getting John Lester was really awesome. And then to see, his rival and nemesis, Dave Dombrowski, come back and go get David Price, it's just awesome. And, you look at those two teams, and it would just be awesome to see those two teams meet in the ALCS somehow. So that's my final word.
John?
Well, I would like for Pittsburgh fans to stop listening to a wrestling character to try to get their baseball knowledge. There are plenty of good radio stations that talk sports. There are plenty of radio hosts in the city alone that can talk a little bit about baseball. Please stop getting your baseball knowledge from a wrestling character. It is by far the most annoying thing that I've come across in this city. And it's no wonder that Don Kelly and Neil Walker shine in the Pittsburgh Baseball Hall of Fame for local boys. Because, seriously, get a freaking clue. I'm so sick and tired of these stupid debates and these stupid comments on Twitter and Facebook about how the Pirates don't care about winning and it's all about collecting a check. It really gets annoying. You said it 10 years ago, and it was way more valid than now. Okay, you wanted them to spend a ton of money on draft picks. They did, to the point where Major League Baseball had to change their policy and change the CBA on what was allowed as far as expenditures. Oh, you want them to lock up one of their young stars to a long-term deal? They did with Andrew McCutchen. They did with Starling Marte, who was seen as a star heading into last offseason. You know, you want them to spend money in free agency. Well, you know what? They're not going to freaking do that because that's not how this team operates, and it's not how a small market team operates, period. I'm sick and tired of people yelling and screaming about how the Pirates don't care about winning, yet they go to the Steeler games on tax dollars to, you know, that they had to pay in order to have 5,000 more seats or whatever, so they can hear Renegade for the 100 millionth time in the fourth quarter when their team is down by 20 points and 4 games under 500 with 5 weeks to go. Get a freaking clue. Learn the game. It's a great game. Trust me.
Let's go, John!
I know. I don't even think I can say anything after that. That was just unreal. Well done, Penline. I hate Mark Madden too. But
I do too, man.
I'm just gonna say I feel bad for Paul George and that hideous injury he had in the USA scrimmage game. It's gonna make people reconsider if the pros should be in there. My one friend tweeted me and said this couldn't have happened if they had the NCAA guys in there. It should have just been them. Well, if you do that, you're going to hurt college kids, and there goes their future career too. So there's no way to really win it if you think pros should be in there or not, and that goes the whole way to hockey, playing in the Olympics. It comes with the risk. You have to do it, but feel bad for Paul George. Here's for a speedy recovery, and Derrick Rose looks amazing. And that's all I really have to say. I know NBA in Pittsburgh doesn't go over well, but my show, I do what I want. So, guys, thank you for joining me. It was a fun, spirited show. We will talk a lot of football next week, get into the Steelers more and more. It looks like we have a cat on the show, and I'm not a cat man, but it looks like we do. So, yeah, until next week, we will talk to you. For Gar Mercury, John Penline, I'm Mike Waterloo, and John's cat. We will see you next weekend, guys.